A popular saying is nothing ever lost on the internet, but what is something you have been searching for years and you haven't found it yet? The night that Tony Hawk did the first 900 back at the 99 X Games, they played a music video-like thing with Feeder's The Perfect Day showing all his misses and then finally the hit. It basically doesn't exist and it bothers me. Have you tried tweeting at him? If there's anyone who would have a video archive of the X Games, it's Tony Hawk. A quote from a book, maybe Lundy Bancroft? About how to get a friend out of an abusive relationship. I want the original source. I believe it was in a Q&A format that ran a bit like this in ideas, but not phrasing. Q, my friend is in an abusive relationship, but she won't allow us to help her leave it. How do we safely get her out? A, you don't. You need to offer her the opposite of what her abuser is, choices. Allow her to socialize with whom she wishes, even her abuser, because he's probably isolating her. Forgive her for being flaky, because he may not be. Allow her to choose for herself even if you disagree with the choice, because that's the opposite of what he's doing. She has to decide to leave by herself. Why does he do that? Inside the Mind of Angry and Controlling Men by Lundy Bancroft. This old French website that hosted these pixel clip art versions of Disney characters. Because the outlines were single pixels wide and there was no compression, little me could save them and recolor or edit them in Paint easily. I basically made a whole drag and drop dress up game in Paint using their Tinker Bell and Jasmine. Like, I don't have much use for it these days, but I look for it occasionally just for nostalgia purposes. Last time I used that site, I must have been like 12, it's been well over a decade. I used to do the same thing in Paint. Except not with pixel Disney characters but just regular pixel girls. An Antique Roadshow episode where the appraiser asked the owner if they had cleaned a priceless Milanese helm. They responded, I hit it with a Lil Lemon pledge, and the appraiser visibly shivers. I think this is why you can't find the episode. Looks like they pulled it. Priceless Milanese helm. Formerly priceless, it sounds like. What color is Griglin Gray? Grandfather always talked about painting his house Griglin Gray, but I can find no reference for it. Found a mention of Groglin Gray in some random book on Google Books. As dusk approaches, the sky becomes a certain color gray. Might ye know the name of that color? She shook her head. Why, that be called Groglin Gray, he answered smartly. Groglin Gray? She exclaimed, scrunching her nose and eyeing him in disbelief. Catherine stiffened, turning slightly, knowing what was coming next yet was unable to stop it. Why, little lass, your education be lacking for sure. Groglin Gray is, of course. He paused for emphasis, the exact color of Ashy Mouse's fart. That song I can kinda hum, but only know one word to, and to Google song lyrics plus love would clearly be ridiculous. Have you tried this website? You hum and it finds songs for you, https://www.midami.com/. An electronic copy of the Machine Gun Dealer's Bible, which I bet a coworker years ago I could find. In an effort to prevent myself from owing him $5, I am still looking for it. Back in the 2000s I was eagerly awaiting the release of the latest Harry Potter book. At the time there was a theory going around that a copy of the book was released for Bush's kids to read or something like that, and it had leaked onto the internet. This led to teenage me searching high and low for it and finally coming across a downloadable 600+ page book. I spent days reading it on my family's PC. It was amazing and I had it early. It wasn't till Harry and Ginny had sex together for the first time that I realized I was probably not reading the real book. Still, it was good. I finished the book and was shocked when the real one came out and shared a lot of similar storyline minus the sex, of course. My first dip into fanfic. In 2003, there was a commercial for I Think E-Trade where a CEO retires and hands the company over to his stoner bro grandson, whose entire press conference is him saying I'm so stoked. Everyone dumps the stock immediately, and the ad was about how quickly you could trade using E-Trade. My family loved that commercial to the point where we had shirts made that said I'm so stoked. I have looked through a lot of commercial compilations in YouTube, but have still never found that ad. Didn't find the commercial, but I did find an old forum post searching for the same thing. Either you've been searching for a long time, or you're not the only one wondering. Around 1999 I had borrowed a digital camera from school and took a lot of pictures of friends and stuff. It was back when people really didn't carry around cameras except for special activities. I remember uploading them to my brother's University Unix shell account to share with some people, but when he graduated and that account closed I lost access and didn't have any backups. Really wish I still had those photos. Nobody has them. I've been there, man. I was doing some data recovery on my mother's old computer after she passed away and came across a partial backup I don't remember making of a memory card I'd lost back in 1999. Handful of pictures of my friends and I that I'd been sure were gone for good. Just wish I had the rest. I spent about 10 years searching for a woman I went to university with. I lived with her for 2 years and we were good friends. She was just not too hot at being contactable. Like the sort of person who loses their phone every few months so just gets a new one with a new number. Anyway, she had zero web presence so was practically impossible to track down, but I figured maybe one day she would make herself known. Well, one day she did. Turns out she got married and had a young kid, and lived about 3 hours away. We spoke on Facebook for quite a while, and I thought I'd see if she wanted to meet up sometime. And then she died. It turns out she'd just made a Facebook profile to contact her old friends one last time and see how they were doing. She never even told me she was ill. Sometimes she pops up in my dreams and we have a chat there. All the shitty Fruity Loops music I made in my early 20s that was on MySpace. FL Gang for life. This video I think I found on Vimeo of these guys working at a bong shipping facility. Apparently a customer requested a video of the process of putting together their new order for shipping. These two guys put together a great video with them dancing to Maniac by Michael Sembello throughout it. I'd love anyone who can find what I'm talking about. Around 12 to 13 years ago, I got into StumbleUpon, which was a Firefox extension that adds a button to your screen that takes you to a random page that someone marked as interesting. Once, I found a flash animation that portrayed a recreation of a white hat hacker doing a penetration test on a web application. The whole thing was a Linux command shell without any GUI. It started with an IRC chat where someone asked the hacker to look into his application and sent him a URL and another URL for the source code. After a sped up 3 minutes of curl, grep, and SSH, the hacker built a command line script that can pull any username and email from the site. Never found it again. My Tumblr that got hacked and deleted frown had a lot of interactions on it with my first love that passed away our first conversations in my inbox, and I've been trying to see if I can find copies of some posts that may have been reblogged and even sent an email to support to see if it was possible to recover anything, and unfortunately everything is just gone. I have one email that I printed out that I still keep in a box under my bed, but it took a long time to accept that it was really vanished. Maybe try the Wayback Machine? Not sure if they can archive stuff behind logins. I think you'd need to know the URL of the blogs to find anything. The archive team, not related to archive.org, also archived a lot of Tumblr last year due to a change in Toe's banning porn, so there's a non-zero chance they got it.